We've all experienced it. We've all had it. It's been around since before language is even invented. You know, like the I have a gut feeling. That makes me feel sick. Trust your gut. Butterflies in my stomach. I'm just hangry. In this podcast, the enteric nervous system takes center stage. Welcome back to Reclaimability. In this episode, we're going to take a look at our guts, or our stomachs, or the digestive tract, also known as the enteric nervous system. It has been regarded as our second brain, but in reality, it was around long before our brain itself, and its success in not only surviving but thriving afforded us the ability to construct the brain. It is like a wise old mentor that sits in the background, but who influences everything we do. So what happens if we stop and actually listen to it? In this podcast, we're simply going to provide some insight into the less often spoken about and often overlooked nervous system. Today's understanding of trauma or stress or even mental health itself is focused around our thoughts. And while this makes sense, it's also probably the leading cause of our inability to overcome trauma and stress, and to why we see mental health only through the lens of when it is failing. When you think about mental health, actually mental health means the whole entire package, not just when things are going wrong, but also when things are going well. The static approach towards these things has created a belief that we start at some baseline or normal, or at some point where everything is fine until something happens that triggers us, and then we are reacting and responding to stress or trauma, or our mental health is unwell. This is because we really only pay attention to our signals when they become loud enough, and typically only pay attention to the data that makes us feel like we're in danger or that there is some negative outcome, which is interesting. It is a survival mechanism that works really well. Responding to something that's nice is all well and good, but it's not going to save your life. It's more important to be able to respond to something that is endangering yourself really, really quickly. So from a survival perspective, it makes sense that we are geared towards looking for danger as opposed to looking for the good stuff. But in that, our thoughts can become hyper-focused on looking for danger, even when it isn't there. And this is a topic that can take center stage all on its own in a future podcast, and it will. And you can even better prepare yourself by reading The Strange Order of Things by Antonio Damasio. But today we're simply going to look at our guts, which is interesting because they are, in fact, central to everything that we do and influence everything we come in contact with. Every thought process we go into, every emotion we feel, every belief we create around anything and everything. The enteric nervous system is part of the same system that we refer to when we talk about stress, trauma, and mental health. It's part of the autonomic nervous system, right alongside sympathetic or fight or flight, and parasympathetic, rest and recover. If you look at the nervous system as a whole, it fits in the peripheral nervous system, whereas the brain and the spinal cord, for example, make up the central nervous system. It's a separate area altogether. As I try to explain this, I can also see where the breakdown description of the layout and workings of all these things can take center stage in yet another podcast. We often just call a nervous system, but in fact, there's many, many different parts to the nervous system. And the more we understand all the different parts, the more we can actually start to capture an idea of how to work with them. But it's because these systems are not linear or hierarchical in operation that make it difficult to isolate just one. And this is the current problem with understanding mental health today. The quest for simple answers has grossly oversimplified very complex and intertwined mechanics and processes. But what's interesting is when we do actually delve into understanding them a little bit better, we get a clearer picture. And the clearer picture then, of course, resolves some of the stress and the impact of it. Again, just noticing just now how easy it is to veer off track with this is just so much. But get us back into the gut and the enteric nervous system. It is a completely self-contained system within all of our other parts. This means that it has been given autonomy over its roles, which is to take in, digest, and break down material and create energy, and extract waste. This has been the primary function for as long as it's been around. Ultimately, as it continued to evolve, or a better term is develop, as evolutionary psychology theory has really been debunked in many ways with the advancement of research with neuroscience. So the enteric nervous system started to really become able to perform its tasks more efficiently. And like anything else that becomes more efficient, it produces a byproduct, which is a surplus in this case of spare energy and capacity. And this is the purpose of efficiency ultimately when you think about it. And our systems are no different. With the surplus, the organism, or us, uh, we're able to expand some energy towards minimizing factors that impede the process of the enteric nervous system. So again, taking in food, digesting it, and evacuating waste. This would be factors that are external to the organism. So things like the environment. This is everything from temperature to wet to cold to interacting with others and non-living objects, etc. So the organism, or us, decided to invest in a system that would be dedicated to processing information coming in from these things and responding to them so that we could continue with our primary function of, well, basically eat, pooping, and sleeping. Really, that's what we do. Everything else is a response to the interruption of that so that we can go back to doing it. This new system was called the central nervous system, and it was created by the building of a brain to take in and translate all this data from the entire body, and a spinal column, which acts as an expressway for all of the information being collected from our entire body about external influences to get to the brain to be processed, and an action plan created to mediate it. So if you listen to Lisa Feldman Barrett, she's really been incredible in shifting our understanding of the purpose of the brain. And of course, that purpose of the brain isn't about reacting, it's about anticipating and moving towards action to eliminate something or to alleviate us from something that we're anticipating is going to happen. So the plan that the brain ultimately creates is like an energy schematic that allocates the body's available energy to all the systems in the body. This process is known as allostasis. It simply adjusts the available energy so that organs and systems needed to address an external issue are fueled, and reduces the energy in organs or systems in the body that are not useful in combating external stresses. So really balancing the energy within our entire system of all the things that are happening with us, shifting the balance dynamically so that we can adjust and we can address issues that are impacting or impeding our ability to eat, poop, and sleep, so that we can then readjust again and put that energy back into eat, pooping, and sleeping. In a survival situation, the two key factors to success are time and energy. And to a nervous system, anything that interferes with our ability to eat, poop, or sleep equals a survival situation. It doesn't have a whole lot of room for contextualization in that. So what this means to the enteric nervous system is, well, using nervous system logic, there is no sense in taking in and digesting food if the organism is under threat. You don't need energy if you're dead. And so the enteric nervous system is really quite simple in its functionability. It really only has one way to contribute. It uses less energy, meaning it doesn't work as hard. So the enteric nervous system acts as kind of like a pump. It operates by way of what's called peristalsis. And this is an involuntary restriction and relaxation of the muscles within it that essentially let food in and push it down the digestive tract to all the various parts of the process. So you just imagine as food goes in, the different muscle groups that are being used to hold it, contain it in that space, and then push it from that space to the other space and carry on. This process is transforming what we call food into usable energy for our body to use. And it's finite, meaning it doesn't come from the stars or through summoning of the strength of Zeus. It comes from production of glucosamine by the digestive tract. That's it. That's where our energy comes from. So the enteric nervous system can operate independently because it gets all the data firsthand, and also sympathetically because it gets the brain's determination of the data by way of the action plan it sends down to the body. So this is why we can get that gut feeling before we even know what's happening, and then that's sort of fed by our brain's determination of what that data means. So it's kind of doubled down on oh, this is what it means because this is what the brain is telling me, and that justifies the feeling in our gut, and so then we respond to it. This is why when you get that gut feeling, but it's also why you can't think your way out of it. A classic example is if you have butterflies, you get when you're ready to present something, like even if you're going on stage or just presenting it to a group, maybe even a group that you already know, even though you know full well that you know everybody, perhaps you even know the material better than anybody else. Perhaps you just really your close friends. And those butterflies will come up because the nervous system only recognizes that you're putting yourself in the open, you're exposing yourself, you're vulnerable. And so right off the bat, your nervous system, your enteric nervous system, will be able to recognize all these signals as you start to shift gears and moving in towards this. And then that will be fed. Those same signals and data are going to go up into the brain. The brain is going to also recognize and anticipate the moment of vulnerability, the moment of being seen, the moment of being judged, all of these things, and it starts to send that plan to counterbalance that or to navigate that, which goes back into the enteric nervous system again. So now, even though we think we know better, like I know these are my friends, it doesn't make any sense that I feel this way. Our enteric nervous system, our guts still feel that way. So back to the mechanics of the enteric nervous system. Because it only really has two ways of functioning, use more energy to do the job or use less energy so that the energy can be allocated and used elsewhere. We lose appetite, digestion slows, and evacuation slows. In extreme cases, we become nauseous and involuntarily evacuate. This would be an extreme case when maximum energy is needed to survive. And it also creates another survival mechanism, which is, of course, if we're going to fight or flee, the lighter we are, the more likely we're going to succeed. So it has a few different purposes to that. But the enteric nervous system is all about surviving. It works for the long game, not the immediate defend, attack, or escape game. So what does this mean? Well, if the enteric nervous system is responsible for the energy our body needs for everything we do, then the less energy it has to do it with, the less energy it has to produce more. The less energy produced impacts our available energy for everything. In short bursts, meaning during short-term stress, our system is designed to rely on reserves by way of body fat to provide material for the enteric nervous system to produce more energy from. Kind of like those tins of food that your parents stockpiled in the basement in case the world came to an end. It may also even take time before our hunger cues even kick in, and when they do, we become ravenous. But over prolonged stress exposure, the enteric nervous system can become greatly challenged. We don't have the desire or energy to prepare healthy food, so we grab the worst garbage we could find, fast food, etc. And so we ingest that, and this requires our enteric nervous system to operate underpowered while trying to extrapolate nutrients from a highly processed and nutrient-deficient food source. This has no choice but to mean it needs to work harder with less energy for less yield, equaling less energy production, and so the cycle continues to spiral. This also creates an immune response where the body recognizes it is not able to properly fuel up, to be active, or to repair the body from use, so it's provided energy to go into action to isolate and care for the body like it's hunkering down for the worst, and it doesn't know how long it will take. And so you can see the cascading effect and how quickly our energy can be lost. So why is this so important when we talk about reclaiming our ability? Again, it's the long game. By investing in our gut, we are creating a solid foundation to work from. It has far more influence on our body than we ever give it credit for. For one, the gut produces between 80 and 95% of our entire body's serotonin. The serotonin is that feel-good chemical that we seek. We're even prescribed medications to boost serotonin, but this is also impeding our body's natural ability to do it itself. Our gut biome, meaning our microorganisms in our gut, are really quite helpful. We actually need them in order to be able to survive and to be able to navigate everything. They're responsible for many chemical reactions. Chronic conditions such as stress can in fact make some microorganisms even go extinct. Because if you think about it, the fuel and the data are concentrated in feeding the microbes that are being used to defend us from the stress, thereby starving out the others that aren't being used for that. but we actually need for other functions. Recent research has shown this is linked to ADHD and autism, and among other conditions that we have. And there's an incredible amount of research that shows a direct link between our gut health and depression. You think about it, the enteric nervous system is home to between like 50 and 100 million nerve cells, which is equivalent to our spinal column, responsible for sending all the data to our brain. So it's not a small organism whatsoever. Our gut disposition is transmitted to our brain as data. Approximately 90% of our gut information goes straight to the brain, while only about 10% of the information goes directly from our brain to the gut. And the most obvious information is by way of our emotion, which in turn justifies or intensifies the feeling in our gut. So if you suffer from GERD or IBS, you've been suffering from chronic stress, then there is a good likelihood that it's due to the consequences of the enteric nervous system having less energy to carry out its function over a prolonged period of time. And remember, if you think about it, the strength of that muscle to tighten and to relax, to push things through our system, if that's weakened, then our ability to digest and evacuate waste is compromised. The thing to remember about our gut is that it is the long game. So some changes we may actually notice right away in our diet. So you get a hit of something, and most notably with sugar and those kinds of things, but those aren't healthy for us. They're like a quick burst of energy that quickly deplete and then actually make us feel even more lethargic. It can happen quite quickly, but usually it happens over time. So when you're rebuilding your microbiome, for example, depending on the changes, it could take a few days to even a year. But any change that shifts towards healthy food will start that shift, even if you can't feel it right away. The wonderful thing is about tending to the enteric nervous system is that it's simple math. Eat healthy food, and your body has absolutely no choice but to digest and produce healthy energy. It's just that simple. You can't get away from it. So the first step in reclaiming ability is to start with your foundation. While the enteric nervous system is doing its thing in the background by you feeding it healthy food, being intentional about it, and eating regularly, you can work on the other parts. As your body starts to produce healthy fuel, your capacity to process and overcome will increase. That's why the enteric nervous system is so critically important. It's one of those things that we don't think about. It takes a bit longer. It's not instantaneous, though it can be. But it is the foundation where everything else is going to step off from. So if all else fails, start with your diet. Until next time, I look forward to learning and being curious with you. Unlike public institutions or nonprofit organizations, the Atlanta Group and Trauma Training Center uses membership contributions to enable innovative and independent research, publication, program development, and delivery without the bias or influence of outside investors or donators. Got a topic or question? Be part of the contribution by reaching out. We may feature it on one of our episodes. I look forward to learning, growing, and being curious with you.